In this video, we're going to look at how we complete an extended trial balance, or ETB. So on screen at the moment we have a table which shows the various accounts taken from our nominal ledger together with the ledger balances. This is our normal trial balance. To the right of that we have columns for adjustments, then columns for statement of profit and loss, and lastly columns for the statement of financial position. The first thing we need to do is we need to record the adjustments. Now these are given at the top of the screen and there are 4 of them. All of these will be recorded in the adjustments column of the ETB. The first one is to record closing inventory of £10,000. Now inventory at the year end is recorded using a journal: debit inventory, credit inventory. So that's what we're going to do. We'll go to the debit column of our closing inventory and we'll enter £10,000 in the debit side. We'll also include £10,000 in the credit side of our closing inventory line. And that's our first adjustment. The second adjustment is relates to goods received at the year end of £2,000 but which were invoiced after the year end. Well, that's an accrued expense because we've incurred a purchaser's cost of £2,000 and but we've yet to receive the invoice for it. So it would be entered using a journal: debit purchases, credit accruals. So I will include £2,000 in the debit line for purchases and £2,000 in the credit line for accruals. My third adjustment is an allowance for doubtful debts. Now at the moment we have an allowance for doubtful debts of £2,000, but we're told that it should be £800 at the year end. So I need to debit my allowance for doubtful debts with £1,200. That'll take it down to £800. And the corresponding credit for that £1,200 will always go to the allowance for doubtful debts adjustment account. So there I've got £1,200 as well. The final adjustment relates to selling costs that were paid for advertising after the year end. Well, this is a prepaid expense. So I'm going to debit my prepayments with £3,000 and I'm going to credit my selling costs £3,000. I have now completed all of the adjustments in the table. Just as a quick check, I'm going to total all of the debits and credits in my adjustment columns, and you'll notice that they both add up to the same number, and that should always be the case. What do I need to do now? Well, I need to transfer all of these balances across into the statement of profit and loss and statement of financial position columns. But how do I know which goes where? Well, any accounts which relate to income and expenses should go in the statement of profit and loss, and any that relate to assets, liabilities and capital go into my statement of financial position. Now you might not recognise all of them, but we'll go through each in turn. Sales, obviously sales is a statement of profit and loss account because it represents income. So that 105,000 is going to go in as a credit balance in my statement of profit and loss. Then purchases. Well, purchases is a statement of profit and loss account as well. Here I've got a £54,000 in my ledger, and I've also got a debit balance of 2,000 in my adjustments. Well, I'm going to add those together, and that'll go into the debit column of my statement of profit and loss. Opening inventory next. Well, this isn't obvious, but I'm going to tell you that it is a statement of profit and loss account. Next we have the closing inventory. Well, the credit balance of £10,000 goes to my statement of profit and loss, whereas the debit balance goes to my statement of financial position. Then we've got selling costs. Well, I had £16,000 from my ledger balance, that was a debit. I've got 3,000 in my adjustment column, so in my statement of profit and loss, I'm going to record a debit balance of 13,000. The carrying value of my machinery, well, that's statement of profit and loss, it's an asset. Trade receivables, yes, they're an asset as well. Trade payables, that's a liability. The bank, now with bank accounts, they should tell you whether it's a debit or credit balance, because obviously you might have money in a bank account or you might be overdrawn. So there we're told that it's a debit balance, it's an asset, it's going in my statement of financial position. Next, capital. Well, capital goes in the statement of financial position, as does drawings, as drawings is the money taken out of a business by its owner, and that represents a reduction in capital. My accruals, I've got a credit balance on accruals, and that goes to my statement of financial position. It represents a liability. Prepayments, well, that's again goes to my statement of financial position. In this case, I've got an asset. Next, I've got my allowance for doubtful debts. Well, this is a statement of financial position item. So I've got £800 that goes to the credit of the statement of financial position. And lastly, the allowance for doubtful debts adjustment account. Well, the adjustment account goes to the statement of profit and loss. So that's £1,200. I've now transferred all of my accounts across into the different columns of the profit and loss account and statement of financial position. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to calculate the subtotals for each of those 4 columns. And you'll notice that there is a difference between the debits and the credits for both. But there's a good reason for that, and we'll see that in a moment. Let's focus on the statement of profit and loss account. Well, here all of my credits represents income or reductions in costs, whereas all of my debits represent costs. Now, where my income exceeds my costs, I must have made a profit for the year. So I've got credits of 116,200, I've got debits of 81,000. I must have made a profit for the year of £35,200. Now, if I add that £35,200 to my £81,000, I get 116,200. So the debit and credit columns of my statement of profit and loss now balance. So we'll now move on to the statement of financial position. Well, here we can think about that profit of £35,200. If we think who owns it, well, it's the owners, isn't it? That profit forms part of the statement of the owner's capital in the business. So we're going to record that £35,200 in the statement of financial position columns. And we'll do it on the opposite side. So it was a debit in my statement of profit and loss, so it's going to be recorded as a credit in my statement of financial position. Lastly, I'm going to add that 35,200 to the subtotal of 44,800, and I've got 80,000 in both columns. I've now completed my extended trial balance and calculated that the business has made a profit for the period of £35,200. And that's the basic process of completing an extended trial balance.